Hi everyone, my name is Tayyip Bukhari, and along with my colleague Justice Yao, we're going to present the case of intellectual property theft at Yahoo, which is a well-known search engine and also an email provider, a free email provider, and along with some other services that they offer. Uh, Executive summaries: Yahoo Inc. sued a former employee for stealing intellectual property or IP as upon receiving a job offer from a competitor. Mr. Kyan Song, who was a former senior research scientist at Yahoo, allegedly offloaded approximately 570,000 pages of source code onto their personal storage devices. Mr. Song had received a job offer from Trade Desk Incorporated, which is a direct competitor of Yahoo. Upon suspecting malicious behavior, Yahoo issued and of course, their investigation, Yahoo issued a cease and desist order for Mr. Song to return equipment, uh, which was which was his personal storage devices that were used to transfer the data. And then Yahoo conducted a forensic analysis, which confirmed the data movement. Uh, so, what in this case, it was not an external attacker. Cyber threat was not external; it was an insider. So, what is an insider? According to the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, their definition is an insider is any person who has or had or authorized access to or knowledge of an organization's resources, including personnel, facilities, information, equipment, networks, and systems. In other words, an insider is somebody who's on the inside. They have this is a trusted employee or a contractor who a company has given access to perform their job, and it's great that they're doing their job, but unfortunately, with malicious intent, can also cause significant damage by stealing or any unauthorized data movement. What were the objectives for Mr. Song? Mr. Song targeted Yahoo's IP as one of their trusted users on their computer systems. Uh, his position as a senior research analyst most likely entitled him to elevated rights, which makes sense. Being a senior research analyst, you probably have access to some proprietary information, source code, and some trade secrets. Not only did Mr. Sung steal the data, but allegedly the intent was to share with the competitor, Yahoo's direct competitor. Of course, this would give as trade desk, which is the competitor, a significant competitive advantage if you have the IP from a competitor of yours. Uh, Furthermore, it could have been motivational or financially motivated, where Mr. Young received a very generous six-figure signing bonus with Trade Desk, along with $1 million in stock options that would vest over time. Who was the target? In this case, it was fairly evident that Yahoo was the target. Mr. Song, being an employee, targeted their employer, Yahoo. And then specifically, it was Yahoo's AdLearn platform, which is essentially the backbone of the organization's what's known as the demand side platform, a DSP, a digital marketplace for enabling real time ad buying. I will pass it over to my colleague, Justice, who will go over some details around how the attacker did attack the system. Over to you, Justice.
That was a great intro from Tyab. So I'm just going to do brief overview of how did the attacker attack the system. So they stole source code, downloading it directly from GitHub, most likely transferred via a zip file for obfuscation. Uh, Again, it was very possible that an auditing tool could detect the large data. Uh, especially if he was a developer researcher, they could have constantly been flagging some of the activities that he was doing. And finally, what you're going to learn in the next slide, Yahoo did not have a remote way to analyze the physical data, so they were only able to do it after the cease and desist order on his property. That was a great intro. Um, so I'm going to go over the post confiscation analysis. And the reason I say post confiscation is because they actually weren't able to get this information that I'm about to share until they had to basically do a seizure of the devices from Mr. Song. Uh, so you can see already not great cybersecurity if they weren't able to detect it and actually needed to seize the physical devices. But once they got the physical devices, what they saw was there was allegedly online communications about using cloud storage solutions, specifically with a company called Western Digital. So again, already kind of a red flag if they were using, you know, company computers to do some of these messagings with these third party companies. They could tell what would you use a cloud storage for. They were also able to tell it happened exactly 45 minutes after he received his offer letter from the other company. Um, he downloaded over 570,000 pages of proprietary source code. And how the download happened was he downloaded it from the remote cloud hosted GitHub server. Uh, GitHub's basically where you can host repositories for large code bases. So his first step was downloading it from GitHub, and there's usually a option in these GitHub repositories where you can download the files as zips rather than just individually downloading you know the fi- uh, the source code. So he most likely downloaded it as a zip file. That kind of already gives it one set of encryption because it's hard to see what's in a zip file since it's encrypted and shrunk, compressed down. Once he did get those files off of GitHub, he then transferred them to two personal external storage devices, so something like a USB or a hard drive or SSD. And when they recovered the files, they noticed that he kind of obfuscated the file data by naming what he downloaded like bidding research, right? So trying to make it a little more benign than saying proprietary source code or the exact .c, .rs, .py files. And like I mentioned at the beginning, he was only able to perform this analysis after the devices were confiscated. So, or excuse me, Yahoo was only able to perform this after the devices were confiscated. So again, this was not happening real time. They had to basically do a cease and desist from Mr. Song to get the devices, and then they were able to do the confiscation analysis. So next, I'm going over the mitigation. So again, you know, we already saw a lot of bad practices happening, right? And definitely probably preventable. Um, so first, right off the bat, is to do employee insider threat training programs. Now, Mr. Song was higher up in the company. Um, I'm sure he had coworkers that he talked to. Uh, One of the biggest threats facing companies, like what Mr. Song did, which was exfiltrating data, is usually from the inside. So it's an employee that does it, and they have these insider threat training programs where basically it helps all the employees working there try to spot maybe somebody being a bad actor inside their company, right? So maybe if somebody had heard that Mr. Song was, bragging about leaving in a couple weeks to a new company, um, you know, maybe there could have been some red flags there, right? Maybe he, said something about how he was going to use, even the information that he was using now. So again, doing an employee insider threat training program is great to make sure all your employees are aware of, possible signs of what Mr. Song did. And so again, right off the bat too, you could also Yahoo could block or detect messagings with third-party softwares or websites. So if they're using some chat application like Facebook or Discord, maybe on their company laptop, that would obviously be something that would need to be looked into. Um, Also detecting the source from where downloads are occurring on employees' computers, right? So you know, maybe if they saw instantly that, hey, he's making a lot of downloads from GitHub, they could have flagged that as well. So again, being able to see where the sources come give you context, right? So maybe he always has a lot of traffic from other websites where he's doing research. But if it was from the company's GitHub server, that would look pretty suspicious. Again, also limiting the amount of data. Like mentioned, it was about 570,000 pages of the source code. That's a large chunk of data. Even zipped up and compressed, that's probably still gigs of data, especially if he was using a secondary hard drive. So limiting the amount that can even be downloaded within a span of an hour, a day, right? That's again another flag. You maybe have to request access from an administrator to get that cap off. But again, they were saying 45 minutes he was able to, or 45 minutes after he received the offer letter, he was able to download that much. Finally, kind of going on with detection is classifying the data transferred in a network, right? So again, maybe they're just downloading JPEG pictures, like trying to get images off the internet, maybe an MP3, creating a video similar to this, text files, like readmes, .md files. Being able to classify what's going on and what's being transferred in your network would be huge, because if you saw something like zip files, that could be suspicious. He's obviously wanting to compress large amounts of data, right? If he was doing direct source code, you could tell again .c, .rs, um, .py files, right? So again, being able to see what type of data is happening in the network could be another sign. Finally, again, like mentioned, they weren't able to actually access and do that kind of post confiscation analysis until they were able to cease and desist it. So they a way to mitigate is that always having remote access to these physical corporate devices, right? So like his company laptop, they saw that large amount of data. Instead of having to physically get that computer, they had remote access to it where they could check stuff and do kind of that analysis. They could have caught it a lot sooner. um, so last, uh, again, another thing you could do is block the transfer of data to outside devices, right? So again, we saw that he used two personal storage devices, most likely a USB or an SSD, or even a hard drive, right? So you could actually block when they plug in a device like that from a company laptop. Don't allow them to transfer files. Don't allow it to basically have access to the computer. Block anything that's connected via USB, USB-C. That way you can prevent anything coming off of corporate devices. So again, there was probably a lot of ways that this could have been mitigated, definitely detected sooner, probably even prevented or at least limited. Uh, but they didn't have a lot of these mitigations in place, and so they weren't able to actually stop him from doing the theft, and even using it for a little bit, like using that proprietary source code. And so finally, I'm going to let him finish with our conclusion.
Thanks, Justice. Yeah, so just to conclude, a couple of items here. So, loss of IP, intellectual property, can significantly damage a company's competitive advantage. Unfortunately, which can lead to financial or reputational losses for any organization. Uh, and it is very difficult for some organization, unfortunately, are unable to recover from such losses. And then just secondly, it is just crucial for any organization to monitor their own systems, not only for external threats, trying to intrude or breach our systems, but also internal threats, which is, any unauthorized activities such as data movement or exfiltration of data. And some pointers, of course, this is not a complete list, but some of the technical controls or safeguards that can be implemented to prevent insider risk are, having a program or a deployment of data loss prevention. So if someone tries to move data, unauthorized data movement, a system is there to prevent it. USB lockdowns. This is a popular one where if your job does not require USB usage, it is going to be blocked, and this can prevent unauthorized data transfer as well. And then external cloud storage. So personal cloud storage, if you shouldn't be a reason where you need to access personal cloud storage sites at your job. Your employer should have their own cloud storage provider for easier data movement or file sharing across the environment. Thank you very much. This concludes our presentation. Appreciate your attention.